London, 1850. The undisputed centre of the world, the beating heart of an empire that spans 1/4 of the Earth's surface. Also, without question, a methodical and efficient death trap. It doesn't announce itself. There is no alarm, no sudden moment of clarity, no visible line in the sand between the air that sustains you and the air that is, very quietly, killing you. You simply wake, as you do every morning, in a room that is neither properly dark nor properly lit. The window is a square of thick grime. The glass beneath is coated in a layer of soot so dense it feels like velvet to the touch. A thin, jaundiced blade of morning light manages to force itself through, and in that narrow beam you see them, the motes. They drift. Slowly, almost gracefully. They turn and wheel in the light as though they have nowhere particular to be and all the time in the world to get there. What you are looking at, though you do not know the word for it, and would not care if you did, is the residue of a civilization. It is horse dung, ground to an invisible powder by 10,000 iron wheels on 10,000 cobblestones. It is soot from 1,000,000 sea coal fires. It is the shed skin cells of your neighbours, the metallic ash carried east from the Woolwich foundries, the dried effluent of the Thames that the night air breathes back into the city every dawn. It drifts slowly, almost elegantly, like snow that has forgotten how to land. You take your first breath of the day. You don't think about it. To you, this is simply what air is. It has always been this way. It will always be this way. It tastes of sulphur, sharp and metallic, with a lingering aftertaste of damp stone and river rot. Outside, the London particular has arrived, the famous pea super rolling in off the Thames before first light. It isn't a weather event. It is an industrial byproduct. The city manufactures its own atmosphere. This fog is a yellow-black suspension of coal smoke and river moisture, so thick you can feel it pressing against your eyeballs. It swallows buildings whole. A hansom cab passes. You hear the rhythmic clack-clack of hooves on wet stone a full 10 seconds before the yellow smear of the lantern emerges from the murk, and it disappears again before your eyes have quite registered it. A lamplighter somewhere ahead is already extinguishing the gas lamps. There is no point. The fog is brighter than anything he could offer. You walk to work. The air has genuine weight to it, a faint, nagging pressure against the ribs, the mild but persistent sensation of breathing through damp wool. You pass a figure in the mist, a shadow of a man leaning against a doorway. He is coughing. It is a deep, rattling, wet sound, the kind that seems to come from somewhere very low in the chest, somewhere no cough should reach. You do not pause. You do not check on him. Why would you? In London in 1850, a cough is no more remarkable than a footstep. It is the city's background percussion. You breathe again and again. Your lungs are doing the quiet, invisible work of filtering an entire industrial revolution, collecting the blacks and the greys, burying them deep in delicate tissue where no light ever reaches. You cannot afford to notice. Repetition is the great anesthetic of suffering. So you walk and you breathe and you exist inside the machine. For now, in 1850, your trade is your destiny, and every trade has its own signature dust. A physician, if you ever had cause to consult one, which you almost certainly don't, could tell the story of your entire working life from the colour and consistency of what you cough up of a morning. Your lungs are an autobiography. Take the baker. He lives in a permanent white haze. Every sack of flour hoisted from the cart sends a soft explosion of fine white powder into the air. It settles on his eyelashes. It turns his hair grey before he is 20. It coats his throat with a paste that never quite washes away, no matter how much small beer he drinks. They call it baker's asthma, a polite, almost cheerful name for the slow suffocation of a man by the very thing that feeds his city, or the textile worker. In the mills of the East End, the air is a blizzard of what the workers call shoddy, tiny, jagged shards of cotton and wool fibre that float like dandelion seeds, slow and almost beautiful, settling on every surface, including the surface of your lungs. These fibres are microscopic hooks. You breathe them in and they anchor themselves in the bronchi, lodging in the small passages and the smaller passages beyond, building a slow and patient nest of lint where healthy tissue used to be. It is a soft snow that never stops falling, never melts, and never goes anywhere. Then there is the coal worker. His world is entirely monochrome. Ancient compressed carbon, the remains of forests that grew 300 million years ago, settles into the pores of his skin, the creases of his knuckles, the whorls of his fingertips. He breathes the compressed black past of the earth, and in time his lungs become a mine of their own. There are old coal men in the East End whose lungs, when they die, are solid, not figuratively, literally solid, like a fist of wet clay. And the metal worker breathes heat and vapour simultaneously. The air near the furnace shimmers and distorts, laced with the invisible exhalation of molten lead and iron. You cannot see what is in it, but you feel it, a sharp copper itch at the back of the throat that no amount of ale ever fully reaches, a metallic ghost that lives permanently on the tongue. Every trade carries its hidden levy. At first, your body resists. You develop what the men around you call a productive cough, a rhythmic hacking clearing of the throat that marks the start of each working hour like a foreman's bell. You pause, you hawk, you spit into the sawdust, you continue. No one looks up. The looms do not pause for a man's cough, the hammers do not stop. The furnace does not lower its temperature out of sympathy. The Victorian work ethic is not a philosophy. It is a religion, and its commandment is simple. If you can stand, you can work. If you can work, you can eat. So you breathe the flour and the lint and the coal dust and the lead vapour. You swallow the slow cost of your own labour, because the alternative, the workhouse, the parish relief, the charity of strangers, is a humiliation so profound that most men would sooner die on their feet than survive on their knees. You notice the cough, then you learn to ignore it. You become, over years, an expert in the art of ignoring yourself, until one day you find that the art no longer works. When the bell rings and the shift ends, you go home. But home in London in 1850 is not a refuge from the air. You carry the factory with you, threaded into the fibres of your coat, ground into your fingernails, riding in the very breath you exhale into your family's faces the moment you cross the threshold. Your home is a single room in a rookery near Spitalfields or Southwark or Seven Dials, one of the warrens of streets that the cartographers draw carefully and the magistrates prefer not to visit. The ceiling is low enough that a tall man must watch his head. The walls run with damp, sweating a white mineral residue called saltpetre that smells faintly of gunpowder and ancient stone. The floorboards have been walked on by so many tenants over so many decades that they have given up any pretense of being solid. Space is the supreme luxury in this city, and you have none of it. You share your few square feet with 5, perhaps 6 others, children, a lodger, an elderly parent who sleeps in the corner and barely moves. Privacy in this part of London is not a concept that applies to people like you. You live in a shared atmosphere, a soup of other people's breath and warmth and illness. The windows stay shut, not because you have no desire for fresh air, you have every desire for it, but because coal costs a shilling a sack, and warmth is the only thing holding the damp at bay, keeping the chill from settling in your chest and the children's chests during the long months between October and April. You stuff rags into the gaps under the door. You huddle together for heat. You create, without knowing the word for it, a perfect and utterly stagnant Petri dish. The air in this room does not move. It simply rotates, breathed in, breathed out, breathed in again, a little thicker each time. It settles into the straw of the mattress, the fibers of the thin blankets, the wood of the chairs, the hair and skin of everyone sleeping here. It carries the smell of the factory home with it. The flour, the coal, the oil, the metal, all of it is here now, in this room where you are supposed to recover. At night, the room becomes something else. You lie in the darkness and listen to the breathing. 6 different rhythms, 6 different chests working through the same heavy air. Then, from the corner where the children sleep, a cough breaks the silence, dry at first, then wetter, a child's rattle, high and thin. Nobody stirs. In this part of London, a child without a night cough is an anomaly, a small marvel that most parents have learned not to count on lasting through the winter. This is how the White Plague works. Tuberculosis does not need a dramatic entrance. It does not need filth or rats or open sewers, though it will happily use all 3. It needs only a closed window and a shared bed. It is a disease of proximity, of warmth, of the simple human need to be near other people. You are giving it everything it requires. You are breathing the same air that was breathed an hour ago and 8 hours before that. The room holds everything, the sweet rot smell of the Thames, which seeps up through the floorboards from the street below, the charcoal fumes from the brazier that keep you from freezing, the intimate, unwashed smell of bodies that have been working hard since before dawn. There is nowhere else to go, no parks for people like you, no green spaces, no sea air, no countryside to speak of, so you stay. And the room does, very quietly, what the factory. It begins as a debt you have been ignoring. A small accumulating bill tucked into the back of your mind beneath more pressing concerns, the rent, the price of coal, the state of your children's boots. You are very good at ignoring debts. Everyone in London is. You notice it first at the staircase, 14 steps, the same 14 steps you have climbed every night for years without once thinking about them. But tonight, at step 7, something changes. Your lungs, which have always been silent partners in your life, doing their work without any input from you, suddenly demand your full attention. They feel lined with wet sand. Every cubic inch of air requires a conscious effort to extract. You grip the banister. The wood is greasy from 1,000 other tired hands. You wait. You count to 10. You tell yourself it is simply the damp. Just the fog, you murmur to yourself, but the words feel heavier than usual coming out. At work, you begin a new performance, the theatre of health. You learn to act with some precision, like a man who is not deteriorating. When the foreman walks past, you straighten your spine, even though it feels as though a length of hot iron is pressed against your shoulder blades. You invent small tasks, inspecting a bolt that does not need inspecting, adjusting a lever that is already correctly positioned, so that you can stand still for 30 seconds and let the black at the edges of your vision clear before anyone notices it was there. You are measuring your life in 10-minute intervals. You look at the clock on the factory wall, not because you want to go home, but because you are calculating with quiet desperation how much longer you can maintain the performance before it collapses. The calculation changes daily. The numbers grow less favorable. You look across at the man working beside you. He is 17, a boy really, but he coughs with the depth and authority of a man of 60. One morning, over the noise of the machines, your eyes meet. And in that brief, unguarded moment, you see something in his gaze that you recognize because you have seen it in your own reflection, in the piece of broken mirror above the wash basin. Raw, undisguised terror. Not fear of pain. Pain you know. But fear of the particular arithmetic being done to you both, the slow and inevitable subtraction. He knows. You know. But the pact of the London poor holds firm. We do not name it. If we do not name it, it is not quite real. He spits a dark globule into the sawdust, wipes his mouth with a greasy sleeve, and turns back to his machine. You do the same. The world begins to change shape. Distances grow. The walk to the public house at the end of the street, which was once a pleasure, a small daily luxury, now feels like open moorland. You find yourself stopping at shop windows you have passed 10,000 times without interest, staring at hats and boot jacks and mantel clocks, seeing none of them. You are simply resting, waiting for your heartbeat to slow from its frantic gallop to something approaching the pace of a man who is merely walking down a street, not fighting for his life. You take on the deliberate, unhurried gait of a man at leisure. You tell your wife it is a dusty throat. You tell yourself that by Monday, always by Monday, you will feel right again. But in the dark, in the room before sleep comes, you hear the truth. Your breath has acquired a sound it did not have before. A thin, dry whistle, a scraping, jagged quality, like dead leaves blown across a stone floor. It sounds, if you allow yourself to listen, like something wearing out. Eventually the performance collapses. You are too thin now. The shirt hangs off you, and the bones of your face have become more prominent, more architectural. The rattling in your chest, which you could once disguise as a cleared throat, has grown into something that fills a room. Someone, a wife, a mother, a neighbor with a harder heart and a clearer eye than your own, tells you plainly that you must see a doctor. If you are fortunate enough to have a few pennies set aside, and you may not be, you make your way to the dispensary. It is a room on a side street near the hospital, its door worn smooth by decades of desperate hands. You sit on a hard wooden bench among others who are also waiting. The air in the dispensary is the concentrated essence of the district's misery. Carbolic acid, unwashed wool, the sweet rotten smell of infected flesh, and something else, underneath all of it, that is simply the smell of people who have been frightened for a very long time. The doctor is a man of brisk movements and deeply tired eyes. He has seen 100 of you today and will see 100 more tomorrow. He does not have time for sentiment, and he offers none. He may press his ear directly against your back. The stethoscope is not yet universal. listening for what the textbooks call rails and raunchy, the bubbling, crackling sounds of fluid and scarring deep in the lung tissue. He listens. He straightens. He does not need to do much more. Consumption, he says, or perhaps congestion of the lungs. The exact phrase matters less than what lies beneath it. A death sentence delivered in the calm, measured Latin of a man who has had a great deal of practice delivering death sentences. He writes something on a small piece of paper. He hands you a brown bottle, laudanum, opium dissolved in alcohol. It is the Victorian miracle drug because it is the only drug that actually does what it promises. It stops the coughing. It dulls the pain. It also, and this is the part he does not mention, stops you from caring quite so much about the direction in which your life is travelling. A chemical veil, elegantly administered. He mentions sea air. You both understand this suggestion for what it is, a social nicety, the medical equivalent of saying, do take care of yourself. You have not seen a green field in 10 years. You will not be travelling to the coast. You leave the dispensary with a brown bottle and a hollow space where hope used to be. You walk back out into the same street, under the same black sky. The chimneys are still smoking. The coal carts are still rattling past. You understand now, walking home, what the dispensary actually is. A waiting room for the cemetery, with marginally better seating. The city does not pause for your diagnosis. The machine continues. You are a worn component, and worn components are replaced, not repaired. You go home, uncork the bottle, take a careful sip of the bitter medicine and sit by the window. The dust motes turn in the candlelight. They look almost as if they are celebrating. The world narrows. This is the central fact of the decline, and it happens so gradually that each individual step feels almost manageable. You are not, at any single moment, confronted with the full scale of what is being taken from you. You are simply presented, one at a time, with small losses. The sum of them is everything. First, the public house disappears. The walk is too far. The steps at the entrance are too steep. The noise of the place, which was once its attraction, now costs too much in breath and concentration. Then the front door disappears. You can no longer face the street, the cold, the fog, the effort of being vertical and presentable among strangers. Then, in a matter of weeks, even the distance from the bed to the wash basin becomes a genuine undertaking, something requiring planning and a rest at either end. Every movement is now a transaction, and your only currency is oxygen. To stand, a minute of breath. To cross the room, 2. To wash your face, 5. To descend the stairs and step into the street, more than you currently possess. You are bankrupt. You have been bankrupt for some time, and only now is the full accounting being presented. Speech is the next thing to be taxed. Conversation, which was once effortless, which was once a pleasure, which was once the thing that made the long evenings bearable, becomes a luxury you cannot consistently afford. To speak a full sentence, to ask your wife a question, to tell your children where the spare pennies are hidden, requires a reservoir of air that is no longer reliably there. You become a man of gestures, a raised finger for water, a slow shake of the head, a look that tries to carry the weight of everything you can no longer say. Inside, a whole universe of thought continues unchanged. Outside, you are becoming silent. You are trapped inside the prison of your own quiet, watching your family move around you like characters in a performance you have been written out of. Your wife speaks to you, you nod. Your children bring you small things, a cup, a cloth, a found object from the gutter, and you receive each one with a smile that costs more than they know. Then come the nights. The great Victorian silence is anything but silent for you. The night is a battlefield, and you fight it sitting up. You cannot lie flat. To lie flat is to feel the fluid in your lungs rising like a slow tide, to experience the particular and very specific horror of drowning inside your own chest. You prop yourself upright against the wall with every coat, rag, and folded piece of clothing you own. You spend the hours between midnight and dawn sitting nearly vertical, arms braced on your knees, pulling each breath in by main force. Breathing is no longer something your body does for you while you think of other things. It is the only thing. It is a full-time occupation, a grueling, round-the-clock manual labor that offers no wages and no rest. In, out, in, out. Each breath must be consciously executed. The muscles of your neck, shoulders and upper back recruited to haul the thick, soot-heavy air down through passages that are slowly thickening and narrowing. You are running a marathon from a mattress, sweating in the cold, heart racing at 100 beats a minute just to keep the blood moving through tissue that is losing its ability to take anything useful from the air. Through the grime-streaked glass, when the light is right, you can see the street below. A woman arguing with a coal merchant, two boys chasing each other around a lamp-post, a man walking fast with his collar turned up, going somewhere with purpose and ease, as though walking fast were the simplest thing in the world. It is. Or it was. These people are moving at a different speed now, one that no longer applies to you. They are in the light. You are in the shadow that the light casts. You understand now that dying is not a single moment of departure. It is a series of subtractions. The street subtracted, the sun subtracted, your own voice subtracted. You are being erased from London while you are still warm to the touch, still present, still watching. You are becoming a memory in a room that hasn't quite decided to acknowledge it yet. The end does not come with ceremony. It is a breath that simply does not complete itself. A small, unfinished exhalation, barely audible, less than a sigh. In a city of 2 million people, one more silence goes entirely unremarked. The bells of St. Paul's do not toll. By noon, your place at the machine is filled. A younger man, perhaps 18, perhaps less, face still unlined, lungs still clear, stands where you stood this time last week. He adjusts himself to the rhythm of the loom, or the furnace, or the press, with the speed of someone who has no other options and knows it. He breathes in the same air. He coughs once, in the morning, a quick, automatic clearing of the throat that he barely registers. He does not think about it. Why would he? This is simply what air is. By nightfall, your place in the bed is taken. A cousin from the country, a new lodger, a stranger with 2 shillings and a need for a roof and no interest in asking questions about the previous occupant. They lie down in the warmth you left behind. They pull the same thin blanket over themselves. They press their head against the same damp wall and look up at the same ceiling, the same low, familiar darkness, the same dust motes just barely visible in the last of the candlelight. They do not know your name. Within a week, the room will have moved on entirely, the way rooms always do. In the factory, no one says anything. There is an understanding, unspoken, almost ceremonial, about this kind of thing. A man works for as long as he can, and then he stops, and then the machine does not stop. The machine has never stopped. The machine is the point. The London fog remains. It presses its yellow face against the window pane as it always has, thick, patient, entirely indifferent to the specific arrangements of the people on the other side of the glass. It does not mourn. It does not commemorate. It simply persists, which is, after all, what it has always done best. As long as the chimneys smoke, and they will smoke for decades yet, the fog will have its harvest. The city must produce. The empire must grow. The air must carry what the air has always carried. And so it remains, swirling in the alleys between the rookeries, settling into the lungs of the new arrivals, the ones who have come up from the country with fresh eyes and clear chests and no idea at all what London costs, waiting with infinite patience for the next breath. The same air, the same city, the same slow, indifferent machine, still running.